All right, everyone, it's time to talk Ohio State football. We bring in Claire Crawford from the ozone.net and her show, Oh, Hail No, with her co-host, Joe Dexter. It's our first discussion here, Claire, in 2018. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It feels like a new year, doesn't it? Fresh start.
Some people remind me in my life that you can make a fresh start each and every morning if you'd like. If you so choose, you can make that change in your life each and every day. But yes, it is. There's something about flipping the calendar to a new year and saying, "Hey, let's do something different this year."
As a person highly involved in fitness, I will co-sign with those people in your life to say, yes, you can make a change any time of the year.
So yeah, I'm guessing that you don't need to make much of a New Year's resolution when it comes to fitness.
No, but I can set goals. But there are no fitness resolutions, no.
I did not think so. All right, talking Buckeyes and Alex Grinch. He is the name on the scene at Ohio State. He is a coaching change that has been made or a coaching addition because the NCAA has allotted one more coach to each team's staff, a 10th coach. So Urban Meyer somewhat safeguarding against a possible departure by Greg Schiano, but even more so just gaining another voice of wisdom and reasoning and instruction for the defense in the room. Goes out to Washington State and brings in Alex Grinch. And as soon as you think Washington State, do they play defense? They don't play defense. Why would we want anyone from Washington State? There's good reason, Claire, as you well know, why we would want to bring in Alex Grinch from Washington State.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I've got beef with Alex Grinch. I really have issue because he is a year younger than I am. He's 37 years old, and I'm proud to say he's a year younger than I am. He is making me look bad. He's 37 years old, and he's already got this like gorgeous resume. He's getting ready to work for Urban Meyer at Ohio State. He's making me feel bad about my life. It's really kind of ridiculous. And when people say young and up and coming coach, that's a short list of guys. And a lot of them are from a similar coaching tree. But Alex Grinch is somebody to be really excited about for a couple reasons. And again, we say Washington State, maybe not a big deal. But they've got some pretty impressive stats to back it up under Alex Grinch's watch.
So you're causing me, Claire, to review my career and then feel really bad about myself.
Right. Hey, I didn't do it. It's Alex Grinch's fault.
It's Alex Grinch's fault. And if you want to throw in a Christmas joke or two,
right,
you can feel free to do that as well. Certainly there will be ones made in sure. Buckeye Nation, I'm sure. But let's get the results is first and foremost. So he comes in as a guy that went to Washington State and where defense was deplorable, laughable, awful, worst in Power 5 football, one of the worst in FBS play, period. 117th ranked out of 100 and I believe at the time 25 teams in FBS football just a few years ago. So the ascent of Washington State football is tied to the offense, and it's really not the case. It's tied more to the running game and mostly the defense because the passing game has always been prolific at Washington State and certainly under Mike Leach, but they got much better. They went from 3-9 or fringe bowl team in Mike Leach's first 2 years to in that top 15 mix, beat USC this past season. The last 2 years played on the final day of the season against Washington with a trip to the Rose Bowl on the line. They've gotten to that point by improving the defense. It's not Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State defense, but it's so much better than it was before. They are stopping people, and they are taking the football away, Claire.
They are. They're averaging over Alex Grinch's 3 seasons there. They're averaging 25 takeaways per season, and that's greatly improved. I want to say they had like 9 the season before Alex had gotten there. So that's one of the things that he preaches above anything else. And Washington State ended up having the 9th ranked third down defense in the country, which is extremely impressive when you think about some of these teams like Ohio State that had a very, very good third down defense. The fact that he can bring something that that Ohio State had been lacking, possibly scoring defense. They could help with that. Obviously you need takeaways to have a scoring defense. And as much pressure as Ohio State put on quarterbacks this year and as many turnovers as they were able to get, it's something that the scoring defense up until Cotton Bowl, that wasn't particularly adept on Ohio State's resume. It's something huge. He called them paydays at Washington State and handed out payday candy bars anytime someone got a takeaway. He's a big culture guy, and from all reports that we're hearing, he's very, very intelligent, very intense. I kind of liken him to a PJ Fleck type of personality. He's very likable as far as the players and how they fall into his system and his culture. And that is like the first step into getting into good graces with Urban Meyer, is creating a culture. And by doing that, you're ended up going to be a good recruiter at Ohio State as well.
So I don't think this is going to be an issue with Mr. Grinch because he's still coming up through the ranks. He hasn't been a head coach or an offensive defensive coordinator at a high level for a long period of time. But I did think about this when Greg Schiano was brought on, a guy that had reached the NFL as a head coach. Once you get too many egos in the room and guys that are alpha dogs that have led programs, led systems, been in charge, it's sometimes a little bit counterproductive, and the egos can bump into each other. But I don't think this is going to be an issue. But I did run through my mind when I saw some headlines and some rhetoric discussing possibly him being a co-coordinator of sorts with Greg Schiano. I don't know how that's going to work, how that dynamic's going to work, but I'm sure Mr. Meyer will figure that out.
There are two reasons I think it will work. I am very sure that Greg Schiano and Urban Meyer have had extensive conversations about Schiano's, we'll say, preferred trajectory for the rest and the remainder of his coaching career. I'm sure he does not want the end of the road to be defensive coordinator at Ohio State, as much as any coach would love to be a part of Ohio State's staff. For the most part, Greg Schiano has obviously lots of head coaching experience, and it's really well documented that he did not enjoy his time off from coaching, that short hiatus. And the other reason I think it can work is that, well, we've seen it work on Ohio State staff with Greg Schiano and Luke Fickell, but we've also seen it work because Alex Grinch is bringing in a very similar style defense to what Greg Schiano already has set in place. He's got a footprint in place of a very aggressive defense. And we saw a tide change a little bit when Greg Schiano came on staff, almost like a philosophy change in the defense. And Alex Grinch kind of dovetails into that philosophy. Very, very, they call it a speed D. That what he was running in Washington State, and it's very similar to what Greg Schiano already has in mind for these guys. And I think he's only going to bring additional shades of what Schiano already would like to do. And if Schiano was to step away and move on, then Alex Grinch would just be enhancing what they had already started there at Ohio State.
Claire Crawford from the ozone.net on board to talk Ohio State football. We're coming live, of course, on YouTube, but also on Facebook Live for the first time. So I apologize to all the people on Facebook that have to stare at me and me alone instead of Claire. But Claire, number one, I forgot how the whole Facebook thing live works because I've only used it for like 2 days. And number two, you are using your phone, Claire, of course. So you wouldn't be able to take part in the Facebook sharing, correct?
Correct. I'm sure I can find a way to do it. I do have 2 phones.
Okay. All right. Very good. So if I'm picking up what you're laying down here,
Mhm.
it would be concerning the Ohio State defense that's been ultra talented, been well coached, been for the most part accomplishing up to its standard with a few minor letdowns.
Right.
Maybe not forcing the big plays as much as it could be, and that's possibly something that could be capitalized upon. Is the speed hitting, opportunistic style to force more turnovers, make more big plays, turn the offense over.
I completely agree with that. And that ball hawk mentality, especially with Alex Grinch being, he again, all reports coming from Alex Grinch, anybody that's his high school football coach purports him to be this just very cerebral as a player, and as a coach has brought that same philosophy in there. So it's not like guys are just going to be flying around the ball, which is what you want them to do. It sounds like it's going to be a very calculated laser focus on this very, very fast defense. And I would like to see what he can do with this secondary.
You could scheme that, Claire. You can hit it from that angle, or just go out and recruit a few more Malik Hookers. That guy would just track down the ball regardless. Just recruit like 10 of those guys and you're all set.
I'm sure they're just, you're tripping over Malik Hookers every day, right?
So, yeah, there you go. All right, talking Ohio State football. We're on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube as well, right here at Mark Rogers TV for the best in college football coverage, if I do say so myself. Just go to markrogerstv.com and pick your team, and you should be able to find them. And we talk to Claire as much as possible to talk up the Buckeyes. And even though the season's over, it seems, Claire, like we're continuing to watch Ohio State play football by just simply watching the NFL playoffs.
There are quite a few Buckeyes in the NFL playoffs, and it was, you always have a sense of pride as a Buckeye fan, knowing, one, that whenever these guys are moving on, that they're successful, and that they're getting starts. And not only are they getting starts as rookies, but they're doing well. But you also know, as someone, I'm not someone that's ever going to say that I follow recruiting very closely, but I do know that is a big bargaining chip that Urban Meyer uses when you come to Ohio State. That you have not only the chance to play in the NFL, you have a much greater chance of playing in the NFL, being drafted, and playing at a very high level. And every single Buckeye that gets featured in one of these games ends up just enhancing the ability for Urban Meyer to use that as a bargaining chip.
I more so want to highlight what we've seen over the past few days in the NFL playoffs concerning Ohio State football, but I will touch on one note that Tony Gerdeman and I discussed more at length, and that's that even those players, and the reason I bring it up and think of it now is we mentioned Malik Hooker, and he's a guy that sat on the bench, grew frustrated, enjoyed his stay at Ohio State, wanted to be there, but thought, when am I going to get my chance? Almost transferred, played one season at Ohio State, first-round pick in the NFL draft. Marshawn Lattimore couldn't get on the field hardly at all, and he's one of the best cover corners in the NFL right now with the New Orleans Saints. So it's amazing how it works at a few elite schools, and Ohio State is obviously right there. So, Claire, what I've done, it hit me in watching the games yesterday. I thought, okay, there are some arguments in college football that never grow old. They never go away. Who's got the best conference? Who's the best program? So forth and so on. And I think one of those is who produces the best NFL players. So I get out my notepad and I go to work while I'm watching the NFL playoffs. So I am starting what I thought was going to be a top 5 or top 10 series. It's going to be a top 25 series of the 25 best producing NFL players currently in the NFL. And we'll see where Ohio State ranks. I believe it's going to be extremely, extremely high. Extremely high.
I I'm super excited about this. You, speaking of bargaining chips, you're just giving me more fuel for what we talked about before, the nouveau riche of college football, to say that they've reached the top of the mountain. They've reached where they want to be in college football, for me to be like, here's my ace in the hole. Mark Rogers said that the Buckeyes have a top 5 program because of the NFL talent they churn out.
Well, that's one of the things that you have to consider.
True.
So in just watching the game yesterday, the New Orleans Saints, I think when in doubt, Sean Payton has told the front office, draft a Buckeye.
Yeah.
Let's get a Buckeye on this team. Marshawn Lattimore, Von Bell on the defensive side. They line up those 2 wide receivers. It's Michael Thomas. It's Ted Ginn.
Yeah.
And here's a stat for you, courtesy my son. This is pretty amazing. Michael Thomas is the only receiver in the history of the NFL to catch at least 195 passes for over 2,300 yards his first 2 seasons. He is the only player to have ever done that.
It's incredible when you think about, and it's not like Ohio State is not known for churning out NFL wide receivers. It is such and considering what a contrast it was from his career at Ohio State, I think he may have even been handcuffed a little bit because of the offenses that he was a part of at Ohio State. And that's not a knock on Ohio State. It's just the fit and the quarterbacks that were there when he was there. But it just goes to show you the talent that he's got is really, I'm extremely well aware of how well Michael Thomas is doing, not just from a casual NFL standpoint, but I've drafted him the last 2 years on my fantasy team. So he's been pay dirt for me.
So, and we'll see Malcolm Jenkins this weekend as well, suited up for Philadelphia. And so we don't see that other guy, Tom Brady, show up in another Super Bowl from the team up north.
That would be fine with me.
All right. What else do we have going on that we wanted to talk about, Claire?
I'm trying to think of all the other good stuff. Luckily, there's nothing crazy going on at Ohio State right now. We've only got good news right now. The recruiting trail has gone a little bit cold in the meantime.
And we've gotten to the point where most of the juniors and redshirt sophomores who are eligible for the NFL draft have received the information, made their decisions. So we've got Sam Hubbard, Jerome Baker, and Denzel Ward, of course, who sat out the Cotton Bowl, who have decided to move on to the NFL draft. Other than that, of course, the seniors and redshirt seniors like a Billy Price and JT Parrott moving on to the NFL. So any thoughts? If I throw those names out and anyone else who's moving on from here, who are you going to miss the most? Who do you think is going to be missed the most by the 2018 team?
That's
really a tough one.
Well, it is a tough one, but I'll add another layer to it. I think I am more surprised by the players that have said that they are going to stay. And not to say that they shouldn't have stayed, but it does kind of perk my ears to think maybe they obviously have a little bit of inside info, and it makes me think that specifically on the offensive side of the ball, what might be changing, what they might be looking forward to. And, I'm obviously a big fan of JT Barrett and what he contributed to Ohio State while he was here. And I will never say that he's not part of the top echelon of quarterbacks at Ohio State. But it is interesting to see that possibly things might be opening up for Ohio State's offense, knowing now that guys like Mike Weber and Paris Campbell are saying that they're going to stay. It's interesting. It might be that a few more wrinkles have been thrown in there. It might be, Joe Burrow has even mentioned that he might be possibly transferring. So the picture is coming into focus now about what this Ohio State might be, offense might be looking like next year, just because of the guys who are staying and because of some of the comments Joe Burrow has made.
Claire, no knock on Paris Campbell or Johnny Dixon, but when I read online that they made an announcement that they were not entering the NFL draft, I thought, was this announcement really necessary?
I had a feeling you would feel that way too.
Were there NFL general managers just thinking, "Ah, shoot, we're gonna have to wait another
Darn it.
year"? Ah.
No, but I think obviously they have some growing too, and there have been guys in the past that I'm like, why I don't understand why you're not staying. So I think that has usually more to do with the current culture and where they think they're going to be in fitting into that offense. But yeah, I had a feeling you might not. Now, Mike Weber is questionable as far as like, oh, are we surprised that he stayed or went? I don't think I would have been really surprised either way. With J.K. Dobbins and his emergence because Mike Weber was injured. But then once Mike Weber was healthy, watching the tandem of those two was electrifying. And there were times that they really needed to lean on Mike Weber, and there are times that they really should have leaned a little more on J.K. Dobbins. So the fact that he is staying and knowing that there will be even more competition for that tailback position, or the tandem of those two together, is probably the most exciting thing I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense because, as you say, it was proven that J.K. Dobbins is not going to just take Mike Weber's job, that there is a definite dynamic there that can be utilized between using both of them that makes the offense so much better. So there is a place for Mike Weber to carry the ball 15 to 18 times a game, have some huge games like he did against Michigan State. I also think he comes back next year and shows that he can put together a complete season because we're removed from his freshman campaign. He got off to a rough start because of injury this past season, and he wants to show NFL GMs that I'm going to suit up for 12 to 15 games and be a complimentary back and a guy that could get you the tough yardage, but I still have a burst, and I'm going to be a viable guy in this offense. And certainly in this day and age, when you need multiple running backs, especially at the next level, there's nothing wrong with that. If he can extend basically what he did in 5 to 6 games to a full season, he will be in great shape for the next year's draft.
I agree. And we're watching teams like Georgia do it successfully as well. And obviously they didn't have a problem executing that system. So it's exciting for both guys, and it's exciting for the position at tailback, knowing that they've got the depth and the ability to create a few more wrinkles.
All right, folks on Facebook, the voice you're hearing is that of Claire Crawford. She is with theozone.net, and she has a podcast with Joe Dexter. It's called Oh, Hail No. So if you don't get there right away, then let it sink in, and you'll get it. If you love the Buckeyes especially, you'll get it. For those watching on YouTube, of course, I'll make these videos available very, very soon. For anybody on Facebook, we appreciate you jumping on for the first time. This is the first time we're going live on Facebook. Claire and I get together about once a week to talk Ohio State football. I see that nobody's got any particular questions, but I do have to make a shout out to Ole Miss Evie because she just said hi. Like to watch you, Mark. Pleasure watching you. So that's Ole Miss Evie. So she runs a Ole Miss site, does a great job covering Ole Miss football.
I love Edie and I love Oxford, and I was about this close to going to school there. So she just barely missed out. I'm not a Southern Belle. I don't think they would have let me back.
But you almost chose Ole Miss.
I was very close. I had a relative who worked there, and I think I decided I was laying out on the back deck thinking this little Yankee was going to get some sun. And the pages of my magazine started to come out because the glue was melting. And I thought, this is the sign I need to go inside. It's too hot here. I'm not made for this.
I lived in Mississippi for 6 years, and I suffered through many of those summers as well. Yeah. Yes. We had a summer there, and I think it was the last summer I was there. And I looked this up later, and I'm not a geek for weather. I'm a geek for sports, not a geek for weather. This is the only time I've ever done this. But I found a site where you could go to any zip code and find out the temperature, the high and the low, every day, any day in history over the last 100 years or so. So I looked it up for my particular town in Mississippi, Columbus, Mississippi. It never went below 90 degrees from May. It hit 90 in May, and it never went below 90 until October.
And 90 in Mississippi feels like hotter than the 110 in Arizona.
Yeah.
Way hotter.
I was playing tennis in Mississippi with a buddy of mine one time, and it was so hot, like it was 107, like it hit like 107, 109 that day. Maybe it was more like 103. I couldn't stand on one spot on the court. I kept like walking around because I couldn't stand in one spot because the heat was going through my shoes. It's crazy.
So we have much respect for you, Edie.
All right. Good stuff. Talking Ohio State football with Claire Crawford each and every week. Check out Claire's show with Joe Dexter. Oh, hail no. Just go to theozone.net. All right, Claire, we appreciate the discussion. It's always fun.
Thank you for having me on, as always. I'm cooking up my Alex Grinch jokes in the meantime.
You get plenty of time to work on those. So I'll be expecting a lot now that you've made that claim.
Oh, don't you worry.